Ladies and gentlemen, participants, ladies and gentlemen, we started the protection status begins. My name is Larissa Dmitsenko. I am writer and law defender. I will be your virtual guide concerning everything which will going on during today's forum. Tomorrow we will also see each other. I ask you, before we will open this forum, to honor the minutes of silence for those who died, for our lives, and for those who are killed by drones. Today, Kiev, 6 people were killed. Memory for everyone. Thank you. Today's forum of protection starts is organized in a partnership with agencies and refugee of UN Nation and charity Forum Right to Protection. Today is a whole day. We will talk how we can support people who need protection. It seemed to me, as I'm a person who also has something to do with legal support, is the question of a button of defense, and it's an effect you cannot switch it off. We always deal with people because it supports all of us. Because be socially useful for other person, it's very big challenge and big privilege. Help will facilitate people for those and those who need this help. I invite you to watch a short video before we will come to the introduction. I greet everyone one more time, and I ask you, the one who needs translation, English or Ukrainian, raise your hand, and you will be given the devices for translation. But please pay attention to the right head. Thank you very much, because we have some time to work before the break. We'll have a coffee break, and I would like to say that today's day we'll have a lot of things to do. You can see in a program that we will have panel discussion, but not only panel discussion. You will also have the section work on your page. You have you can see in which room, due to the QR code, is your section is located, and go there, proceed there after the first panel discussion and after first coffee break. And now I ask all of you switch your gadget off or put them in silent mode. We have the broadcast to Facebook and YouTube. I greet everyone who is involved, who can see us online. And today, after and during break, you'll be able to see a very interesting exhibition of Sergei Karavayna. You can see it in the entrance, and the same you can come to virtual visit in Sumy Transit Center, from where people who have to have to move from where because the enemy puts them away from the settlement. The space is comfortable, and the space is allowed to be visited only by 2 persons, not to get discouraged that more people can be there. Technically, you will get such technical support to visit the space. And actually, we have finalized with technical issues concerning the safety. I will correct you here and during this forum, but now I would like to invite here Mr. Alexander Halkin, the president of Charity Fund, Right to Protection. Mr. Alexander, please get involved. Come to the stage. I'm inviting you. We can share any microphone which is comfortable to use. Good afternoon. If you don't mind, I will have a seat. It's more simple. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for nice words. We are very grateful for such space, for such a new space. It's very nice space, and in some sense, it's a symbol like that. This building is also has suffered. It was not yesterday, but here we had shaheds incoming and missiles attacks. So even here we can see that even during today night and even the building that we are now, there are consequences of such terrible war. We today, I'm very grateful for you for being able to get involved despite very hard night in Kiev, and I think it will be very interesting event, and I would like to say a couple of words about general how why we wanted to come here, because today we have people here who have been forming the system of protection in this state. We all of you all see such real needs of people who are suffering. It's a Kiev city, it's an example. It's a city that we have cities which suffering in the front line, and for example, such city, it's also front line, Kharkiv city, Dnipro city, and so on, and small cities as well. During the period, there are plenty of communities that are on the edge of their possibilities, and NGOs on the edge of resources and families, the edge of survival. Millions of people have lost a lot of things, and the basic things, it's a feeling of safety, feelings of dignity. And without this, it's impossible to make decision, plan, just live on. It's very difficult, you can say, impossible. The things that we provide, the things that we call service and protection, I understand, it's terminology, but I think that for us, it's the things that we call daily routine. It's the things that people badly need. It's basic minimum things for these people. Such services will help to survive. This is a point which give possibility to bring back the control, to find information, to get support and feel that you are not alone. We live in such surrounding which has been changing every minute. I think that many people have got used that fourth year of war, that we have to get adapted very quickly, our services. And we have to learn the things what we are doing very quickly in order to improve and give people the things that we can give us in the best quality as we can do. This year, Ukraine this year 25, 26 as a transformation institution stage in the sphere of social protection, support of IDPs, veterans, children, and people with disability. And it's difficult but very important process. And for us, it's a possibility to get integrated better in humanitarian approach, not only humanitarian state policy, to improve the coordination and make it in such a way to make the system of help to be more accessible for everyone who need it. We are here to assess the current situation, to establish the gaps and share the best practices, and to hear each other. And the main thing, to improve the system of protection, dignity, resilience, and sustainability and partnership. What things people needed, where we work as a sector, what things we need, how we can facilitate each other and support each other. And I believe that such a community is able to work and already works in very tight cooperation, partnership. We can listen to each other and hear. And that is why I invite all of us here to open dialogue, a decision, brave decision, and maybe ambitious, but realistic vision of our future concerning the development of protection. Thank you for your work with resilience, sustainable partnership, and I wish all of us a fruitful and inspired work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. And now I invite a greeting word, the representative of another partner, Deputy of UNDP Ukraine for Protection, Nina Maya-Frekver. And please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of UNHCR, we are really pleased to see all of you. A warm welcome to the Ministry of Social Policy and the two deputy ministers. We are really pleased you're here, and thank you for the support for the protection of Ukrainian people, in particular those who have been affected by the war and those who are internally displaced. I also want to welcome Volodymyr Vasilenko, the deputy governor of Ternopil, an oblast that has been amongst the safest oblasts for years since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, until last week, when people in Ternopil faced one of the deadliest attacks by the Russian Federation since the beginning of the war. And it is thanks to people like Volodymyr, who takes his responsibility to protect Ukrainian citizens, that none of the people that have been affected by the strike is left without a home and without support. And this is what protection means, that we take our responsibility seriously, no matter whether we work with the government at the central or at the local level, whether we work in a civil society organization or in a community or for a UN agency. We all have a responsibility to help protect those affected by the war and those who are internally displaced in particular. With these remarks, I would like to share with you a few findings of the most recent protection survey. We, together with the Office of the Ombudsman and our partners, including Right to Protection and others, we conduct a protection survey twice a year to understand whether internally displaced people, those who are trying to return and recover from their displacement and who are otherwise affected by the war, can access and enjoy their rights and services offered by the government. Unfortunately, the findings of round 2 of this survey, which will be released on 10th of December, International Human Rights Day, paint a really, really dark picture. 29% of internally displaced people are so unsafe that they cannot live an easy day-to-day life any longer. They're unable to exercise any of their rights or access services. This is a deterioration from our findings from round 1. We see that over 10% less people who live in the frontline areas are in a position to evacuate if the security situation deteriorates. 19% of people in frontline areas will not be able to evacuate because they do not know where to go, they do not know where to seek help, and they do not want to leave everything or the little that they have left behind without knowing where to go and what support to receive elsewhere. 62% of internally displaced people have their homes fully or partially destroyed or occupied. 62% of internally displaced people are without a home for themselves. And only 4% of IDPs report that until today they have been able to access full or partial compensation for their home that has been damaged or destroyed. The social protection system that should kick in to support people in their most vulnerable situation has become less accessible for internally displaced people. 13% of internally displaced people face barriers to access social protection system, whether it's to obtain a social assistance, a pension, or a social service. And what is most concerning is that internally displaced people with a specific needs, such as older people without support, a person with a disability or with a chronic illness, or a single caregiver, they even face greater barriers and cannot access the social protection system at 25%. These are not just figures. This is a reflection of lives of thousands and thousands of Ukrainian people who have been internally displaced. Internal displacement is not a choice. Internal displacement is a consequence of the war that has been inflicted upon them. The problem is, though, that the system needs to be more agile. The government system at the moment is too fragmented to provide effective support to internally displaced people. When somebody is newly displaced, they do not know which door to knock on. There are too many doors, and many of these doors do not open. And this is a huge problem. And this is why we are grateful to the Ministry of Social Policy that is developing the IDP pathway. The IDP pathway will hopefully in the future guide internally displaced people better to the right doors, and we also hope that then these doors will open to provide the much needed support in a lot less fragmented way than it is currently available. We also hope that Resolution 1307 with an improved evacuation mechanism will be implemented without delay. And this mechanism needs to be specifically adapted to older people who live in the frontline areas. Older people and those living with a disability are at greatest risk in an evacuation context. It is no one else. And the evacuation mechanism needs to be better adjusted to cater to the needs of these people, including those who live in institutions in frontline areas. There is no excuse as to why People who live in an institution in frontline areas shouldn't be evacuated and relocated into safety and with dignity. We also hope that the government as a whole, through improved coordination, will start addressing all the barriers that IDPs are facing, whether it's barriers to the social protection system, to the compensation mechanism, to the evacuation mechanism, to access to justice. All of these barriers need to be addressed as a whole by the entire government of Ukraine, with all authorities involved at all levels. A barrier-free Ukraine needs to be a barrier-free Ukraine for everyone, including the 4 million internally displaced people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Steffer. I understand that there will be no separate presentation of this survey because you have presented the main results. Am I correct? Yeah. I'm grateful to you for saving some time. And now we will start the first panel. I will kindly ask the support in replacement of the tables a bit because we don't want anyone to be turned with their back to the audience. And while these rearrangements are happening, I will just mention that the panel is very important. It's about the continuity of humanitarian protection and sustainable solutions. Since 2014, and this international armed conflict, we see that we are striving for some consistency, but sometimes we are still lagging behind with practices and policies. I will now invite here Ms. Ksenia Getz, coordinator of Right to Protection. Yes, Ksenia, you will have the microphone. And yeah, now it's your turn to invite the rest of the speakers. Hello, dear colleagues. I will now invite our esteemed speakers to participate. Ansa Filippo, Deputy Head of OCHA in Ukraine. Next is Tetiana Kiriyenko, Deputy Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine. Next, we have Anatoly Kamirny, Deputy Minister of Family and Unity, Department of Digitalization. Next, we have Vladimir Vasilenko from Ternopil Military Civilian Administration, Mr. Eike Ulrichvater, Project Director of Strengthening Communities in War-Affected Regions in Ukraine through GIZ. And also Alexander Halkin, President of Right to Protection. Before we begin, since we have some international speakers as well, please everyone remember that the headsets are available. I will be switching between languages depending on the speaker. And also I will ask speakers to be brief in their interventions under 7 minutes. After that, we will have Q&A. So briefly adding to the statistics presented by Nina, we have about 12.7 million people who need some protection services and aid. It is 1 in 2 or 3 persons in Ukraine, depending on what the denominator is, and we also have 4.6 IDPs, 5.8 million Ukrainians currently staying abroad, and between 3 and 5 million people still residing in the temporarily occupied territories. 1.6 million of them are children. They are experiencing systemic torture, forced disappearance, indoctrination, and persecution. Within the first 5 months of 2025, there was a 31% increase of the killed and injured compared to the previous years. And right now, the number of people with disabilities in Ukraine is 3.4 million, which is also a big increase. So we understand that the scope of suffering in Ukraine is huge, and the international organizations are doing a lot to help, as well as Ukrainian NGOs. But still, millions of people are now dependent on humanitarian aid, on the government support, or on the local community support. They are quite dependent in their survival strategies. And for many, this permanent survival strategies, their daily reality. We understand that the resources are limited while the needs of the population are only increasing and becoming more comprehensive. At the same time, the humanitarian donors are now prioritizing the regions of the East and the South, while the IDPs in the center and west of the country do not have their needs met. As a result, we have some vacuum in humanitarian response. We have lots of IDPs with acute needs and humanitarian services. So here is the background against we are discussing the continuity of protection. We will be discussing the resources, policies, practices, and actions, and how they need to be arranged so that the support services are not stopped when the projects are over, how we make the arrangements with the communities, administrations, national NGOs who could keep on providing services, and also one other task we have is to discuss what should be done right now for this transition to the government-provided social support does not create gaps for the population in need. And my first question is going to be asked in English.
I will start with you first. So, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, what has been the overall volume of funding allocated to the humanitarian response in Ukraine, and what share of that has gone to protection? The first question, and at the same time, there is no active discussion about transition. From OCHA perspective, how do you see this transition unfolding in terms of time frame, in terms of how protection fits into this transition, and which sectoral components are expected to transition first? And finally, how does OCHA envisage preserving flexibility? And if so, what should transition first and what should transition next? Thanks. Over.
Dziękuję. Good morning, Dore Ranok and Sophie. Very, very pleased to be here this morning, and thank you to UNHCR and R2P for organizing, but also to be with all of you on the panel. I'm very delighted, and I have the daunting task of being the first speaker of the first panel, so I'll do my best to try to set the scene and try to build also on what Nina and Sasha have mentioned that I think will echo in what I would like to say. So, you've asked me to look in my homework to look at 3 dimensions, right? The funding, the scale, the trends, navigating also the transition as we're moving forward into year 4 since the full-scale invasion, but also how do we maintain flexibility? So on the funding, I had a look at the numbers. So I look at the numbers of the humanitarian needs and response plan. That's what we could access easily, and looking at the funding to protection, the overall funding. And when you look at this funding, which I know is not all of the funding, but already can give some indication, you can see that since 2022, a total amount about 10.8 billion have been received in humanitarian funding. It's not small, and that also giving an idea of the support that has been provided. Now, if you look at this funding and you look at protection cumulatively, I'm looking at all of protection, including the different area of responsibility around gender-based violence, child protection. So not making a difference. We have a little less of 2 billion. Now, we need to look at usually protection, our activities, our service to the people, and so on. So I think we should not just lock ourselves down, oh, it's only a smaller part, because it's actually a lot of activities that have been implemented and services that have been provided to people. Is it enough? No. And when you look at the trends, it's actually interesting. If you look at the trend of the funding for the plan itself, it's been going down regularly year after year. It's, you have a bit of a downward trend. Now, if you look at the overall level of funding to the humanitarian needs and response plan in Ukraine, it's been one of the best funded plan, I would say, if you look at the global level. And in 2025, however, we see that there has been a drop, and we are right now, I looked at the numbers yesterday, about 46% funded vis-a-vis what we ask for. That's the lowest percentage that we've had since we've been looking at the response since 2022. So we need to be cognizant of that, but we usually say we are the least best funded plan in a way, because if you look globally, the amount of funding that we receive is amongst the highest in support of a crisis. And I think that that's a recognition also of the importance of the response and the support of the humanitarian community. Interestingly enough, the trend for the protection response is slightly different. And you can see that it kind of like was, if you compare it to the average of the funding the plan, it kind of like was lower than the average and then came up further. I've made a slide on that one, and continue increasing. And if you look where we are now in 2025, the average funding for the protection clusters and activities is actually a bit higher. We are above 50%. Now, numbers and reports is what it is, but I think it tells a story as well in terms of the support and the importance of the protection in the humanitarian response. So I think that's something we need to look into. And I think around that point, it's also what it means for the people in terms of services. And I think that we've already started discussing since this morning around what is the impact on population that needs to continue the support. So for me, that's an important message that I wanted to share. And also that protection remains relatively strong overall. So that's a message we can take and continue, advocate for as well in terms of the support that needs to be provided. Now, on the question around transition, and that's actually quite interesting because there have been a number of questions, and I think transition is a valid question that we need to look into. We cannot just stay static and keep doing the same thing. And I think that, Sasha, you mentioned it also in your introductory remarks, is how are we working in complementarity together? Now, I wish I had a fully ready-made answer that I could give you. I don't, but I think that discussion like today are excellent for us to continue discussing. There is no one single answer to that. It's actually our common work with the government, with the international community, with the NGO partners on how do we move that forward. What I wanted to mention to you is that when we prepare the humanitarian needs and response plan, that's difficult to say. And this is what happened when you try to use acronyms all the time. We can see that the needs are evolving. So it's important that some of the needs might not need a humanitarian response, but they need a more, recovery or development type of response. And also we can look at the work that the government institutions have been doing increasingly more. So how do we work together and build? We are here to support and complement. So I think that's the first message that I want to talk about. But to your question, I think we need to look at two things when we talk about transition. We need to look at the what we do and the how we do it. And I think these are two elements that we've been looking at when we've been developing the plan for 2026 that we're almost finalizing, but still working on. On the what, you can see that protection remains a key component, and Kasia will go more into details, I understand, as we go along. But there are some of the needs that we were looking at, in 23 and 24 that maybe we don't need to look at. Maybe some of the needs have changed and we need to adapt to that. So I think we should always, when we look at transition, it's also speak on the humanitarian, it's about what we're doing and how we should do it to make sure that we have the right services to the people. Ultimately, it's about the people and what the people need, what we can do for them. So that's around the what. Also, we know that the downward trends of funding that I started talking about will continue. We expect that it will continue decreasing. So what should we do? How are we best placed from our angle and working with the government as well in terms of multiplying effect and using the resources the most purposefully? So I think that's something that we're looking into, and definitely there is a need for a humanitarian response in 2026, but not only. And what we also see is while the funding will decrease, we also see that the needs are not decreasing. They're actually evolving, they are changing, but they're not decreasing. So how do we answer to that equation together? And I think that's where my point on transition comes in. Now the how. It's also important, and that's what we've been doing and we continue doing, is how do we work together? And you might have heard about a new expression called the humanitarian reset globally in terms of looking at how do we reorganize ourselves and so on and so forth. We've been looking at that in the humanitarian coordination architecture. We've asked ourselves the questions, are we fit for purpose? Is the architecture that we have right now, that we've set up, is still adequate? And there is a number of things that we say, well, maybe not. And maybe we will not have all of the resources or the capacities to look at continuing the same thing. So that's something that we're working on right now. And you asked me the questions around the flexibility and, in particular, the changes of some clusters like the CCCM cluster. And there is an evolution, and I think Kasia will discuss more into details, but there are a number of changes that are going to happen in the coordination architecture. It doesn't mean that the service will disappear. And we need, I think, we're finalizing this, and we'll need to communicate more around those issues as we're finalizing so that we can also explain. So we're changing, we're evolving, we're adapting, both at the national level and most importantly at the local level as well. I think that's quite important. So looking forward, for the plan in 2026, we will really focus on some core issues, some core priorities that we've started looking at around, the frontline response, the support to newly displaced and evacuated people, emergency assistance for those affected by strikes, and also looking at the centrality of protection for vulnerable IDPs and at-risk group. And I think in that priorities, there will be a lot of work that we'll need to look at in terms of the transition. Now, your last question, and I'll try to keep it short because I have a tendency to speak forever, around flexibility. I think it's an excellent question, and definitely that has been a framing parameter of what we've looked at when we've done a plan. I usually say to my colleagues, a plan is a plan. A plan is there to help us think through what do we want to do, what is our strategy. But then it's a bit of a red line that we follow or we don't follow, and that's okay. And I think once we have the plan is how do we implement the plan? That's even more important than the plan in itself, because the evolution change, we've seen Ukraine, the context is extremely volatile. So how do we build from there is very important, and it is possible to deviate. We have example in the previous years that if there is an emergency elsewhere or the needs are changing, we have to be flexible and agile. And I think that this is something that was recognized by the humanitarian leadership when we developed the plan. They say, when you think about it, think about being flexible and agile. So I think that will be a key framing parameters that we will have. And I will conclude saying a plan is not set in stone, but it actually helps us to guide our response and work together to say, are we on track? Are we not on track? How things are moving forward? And what is the best response that we can bring? So I think I'll stop here. I hope it's helped a little bit to frame and set the scene, and I'm more than happy to provide more details, but I will stop for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie, for setting out so clearly the dynamics and the scale of humanitarian funding, as well as emphasizing the importance of flexibility in terms of the needs of conflict-affected populations that are evolving. So, я буду переходити на українську.
I will come to Ukrainian language, and the logical next step in the context of provision of the sustainability of the protection of humanitarian protections. Very important to watch how states see it. So, Mrs. Tatiana, let me refer to you. In the program of activity of government the year 2025-26, in the framework of operational target, we have development of social service. We've provided the integrated module of support of IDPs. Would you please get in more detail in such a concept? First of all, what kind of component will be captured, or will it capture the whole way of IDP, from the taking of the decision, adaptation, providing of the education, employment, to social services, about care, and how it's planned in the framework of such integrated model to share the empowerment between central authorities of the executive party, Ministry of Social and communities. Can you see in this sphere the role of non-governmental national agencies and international NGOs, and what kind of element can be used in such systems? Thank you, Mrs. Ksenia. And today I would like to greet all of the participants of our forum. I would like to say thank you for the invitation, because in such dialogues and such event we are needed for us, both for institutions as ministry which forms the policy of support of IDPs, because it's about the policy, not from the cabinet. It's about dialogue of people who stay in difficult condition, about exchange of experience and the solving of the question, acute question, not about the beautiful words, but about real needs and mechanism of their salvation. And here in such a possibility, I would like to say thank you for all of the partners which are here, because in effect the things that we will talk about today, me and my colleague Anatoly Komerny will tell about the technical IT part of our platform, future platform. And I would like to say thank you, especially Mrs. Nina, and for all our partners for giving us possibility, also experts, to work on this module, because we understand that in fact we are restricted in time and we have to move on today for quick decision. But so social policy today, it's integration not from conditions such a kind of payment to provide some kind of small need of people, but it's a mission of such sustainable policy to provide such support for people which will give life better, and not for people to understand if the person has own on the life in crisis condition. And for today, our task is in general, the things that we are doing, if we talk about our system, about our concept, and about our strategy as well, we build it and we see all the participants of this process. We create such system of coordination which would show where we have state, where we have the authorities of executive power, where we have authority of local municipalities and both regional authorities, because the biggest, of course, the biggest load we have on them, and where today we have our partners, because we understand that if we create the program in Ministry of Ministry, we have financial, but we have plenty of programs. Both we have Institute of Civil Society, and when we are talking about the status of IDP, we generally often are restricted only one thing. This person can build a life in new place. It's only the head. But we might say about the problem of such person, because each person left home has plenty of needs. Someone has such needs in housing, emergency housing, employment, education of children, and such needs are changeable from stage to stage. This will be changed, and our task is to build a system which will have the single system of social support of such a person, from necessity to evacuation to integration of such person into community, into the society, to have such social support with all participants of such process, starting from the state, starting from institutions, starting from and continuing with our local municipalities, and correspondingly with our international partners, because we understand that our strategy has been built on support of such person, and we understand that there are stages of evacuation, transmission, and stage of adaptation of such person, and it's of course the support and help of person to the integration in the community, into the society, and we also include such stages, as we have been told. It's bringing back our Ukrainians, because when they will come back, or will come back now, for today, they have the same status, IDP status, which cannot come back home. And our task on each stage, we should really reveal such problematics that we must solve all together. If you are taking our stages of evacuation, it's probably the biggest stage, and involved all our partners involved, and all people who are present here in this audience, because it's the most difficult stage. Where the stage is made due to our institution of civil society. And I would like to thank you for all of you to pre-front line also, because hand in hand with the state you come to support our community when it was such important, and we understand even today now the stage of consolidation of all efforts of all participants needs the standardization. We clearly must understand that today we have a state program, we have a program of locality and our donor and partners program, but we don't understand who on which field is playing, and who of these participants must be efficient in this place, in this time, for this direction. That is why the standardization, the problem to solve this standardization of such services and support, which is given from the moment of evacuation and transit point, it's very important. And now now such processes which we work out together with experts, with UNDP experts, and understand this basis and responsibility and participation, and for us to be able to efficiently divide the resources that our speaker have been told about, because we understand that it's no such resources. We have lacking resources today, and today the main problem of ours today is the stage of evacuation. More detailed will be told by my colleagues about our data control and such support of such person all stages. And today we have the big problem, and we understand that we have the multiplication of the support, or a person can receive nothing. And answering the question, if the person will be sure that state is nearby and the support will be received, the person needs is a system of standardization, systematization, the solving of integration of all efforts of data, and the tracking of such people, taking out of into account their needs. Because today social policy is about the choice of person, where to live, where to work, and generally in the community to live in, and what things should select. It's about the dignity and about the choice. And when we are going to talk and we are say about our next stages, about the transmission, about the adaptation, we also say about such problematic as we today face. It's our question about logistics that we solve together with our partners, a question of temporary placement of the people. And today we have a system of temporary place of living, and we have plenty of state system of support, and this system also financed by our partners, partially. It's a small, it's a partners for people with low mobility, because it's a category which needs a big focus, people who need the support of the state, and we are able to give them the mechanism of living and staying and rebuilding of their house. And our task is to provide such possibilities, and we say about program of support of our municipalities, about subventions that state is given to make such a condition of living in such way is enough or good for people with low mobility, about stationary care that we development and today that we implement together with our partners. It's necessary documents which will support this evacuation, this emergency evacuation, about the placement of such a category of people. And of course, we have such problematic that we must solve complex way in our system. It's work with the people. We say that today we say that when we come out of crisis to stabilization, from stabilization, person have to transfer to some place of living. It's about adaptation of persons, the issue of living, and we understand here that here we work on such things. We have to build from the transit center with a multidisciplinary team which will provide not only the support of a person from point A to point B, but to support person to be able to establish the priorities and the vision of their life. This question is very complex, and we have to provide such all the information concerning the place of living, to provide the complex program and establish the needs. If the person came and used to live in some private house and had such necessity to live in such private house and to deal with such cases, some household, we have to give such possibility. And we work on such program And in budget year 2026, the new program, we have some funds, and we will build. But the main sense is that the person who lives, who is stabilized, must understand that place of temporary living. It's a temporary living. We have a problem such to many people in such temporary placement. We must encourage such people to come out of such zone. It's non-comfort, but we must provide something, work, which provides house and the mechanism of support. And here it's very important to establish the need of person. We talk about such social support, the complex decision, as that people, as it all must work with the help of NGOs, with the help of specialists. It's a multidisciplinary team which must establish the person needs such kind of support, and as it's education, employment, or employment is also integration in some community. What should you do with the children? It's education, kindergarten, schools, and so on. This is a kit that we, as a Ministry of Social Policy, we had to generalize and in complex through all of the stages. And the single system that will take all of the information, it will let us make such tracking of such person. If you are talking about such issue of integration, we come to this week about support of person and to encourage to be active in the community, because our task is not to leave the person in the temporary place of staying and bring this person home, let it be like this, or make this person a new member of the community, maximal comfortable condition to be active member of such community, and build the economy of our state. And yes, generally, if you talk very briefly, it's about our way, about our system. My colleague will tell about this because it's very interesting. I hope I have answered all the questions. Mrs. Tatiana, thank you very much. 6 pages I have written. First of all, I will make a conclusion, some kind of concept. I was trying to fix the principle. We have been talking about the need-oriented approach in the basement of the system. If she'll track all the needs, we talk about the constant sustainability of the stages on all stages of IDP, and the basement of such system, it will be always a choice of the person. And we have been thinking that the system will provide a clearly established all actors' role and standardization. You also have underlined, and thank you, about the importance of informating and incorporating of the support of people with low mobility, people with disability. And thank you very much for reminding for that you need to work out the strategies of taking out of temporary places of staying, because only very vulnerable people in effect. Mrs. Tatiana, you talk about the data exchange, and for thank you, and I will give the floor Mr. Anatolian. The single system of support of IDP, it provides information, digital decision. Correspondently, tell us, please, in the concept of digital component of such system, what kind of state register will be integrated? What kind of services will be accessible in one window? So, of course, with this transit center starting, but in effect, it will be integrated instrument as in context of evacuation, displacement, and coming back reintegration, or is such a question from other part? In which way such digital system will simplify the life of the social sphere? Because data exchange is not only only about the access to the service. It's about the load for the service staff. Thank you for your question. First of all, it's very pleasant to be here in open space and talk about such components. It's the best place for it. And here, no magic in any. It says all IT projects. What kind of register we have to laws? All register when we have starting from where these people used to live, and register where they were used to live. Single register of property rights, where their families also can show us by dot system. And we go to such business systems, systems that Tatiana has been told and talking about this recently. The most Mrs. Nina has been telling that we had to build agile process when we have the beginning of the process, when the person has a decision about evacuation or the family with the children, and we understand that we need to take family with the children with risk from risk, very risk territories. We start this process.
And we finish it once the reintegration is complete or once we have addressed all the issues. And very importantly, we seemingly say good things, but we also keep reiterating this terminology, IDP. Let us rather transition from the status to the needs of the person, because the needs are different in different people. As Tatiana is rightly mentioning, we need to ask these questions. Where did the person live before? If the person lived in a separate family house, most probably they will have hard time living on the 24th floor in Kiev. If someone has been a miner for all their life, this person will have hard time learning IT. So we need to ask these questions to understand the needs of the person, and this is something to be addressed by our social workers. Will it be simpler for them? I guess no, but it's going to be more understandable, because when you see where the goal is, what the next steps are, the work is still there, but the impact is much stronger. And this is why we are establishing this system. Every action of every person working on this, whether it's the public sector or the government or humanitarian organizations, so they need to produce the best effect. There is no single silver bullet, something that would address all the issues automatically. And we also need to understand that all that has been discussed by Nina and Tatiana, all of this pathway consists of very simple elements, especially if we have IT people among us. They will immediately understand what I mean if I say SLA, and this is exactly what we need to put in place. The service level agreement between the government and these people, and we need to understand what the needs are and how they change in time, and how the government, through the engagement of donors and other tools, can address these needs. Also, once we have all the answers in the checklist, we understand that the person is fully integrated in the new space and that they now can live independently. Okay, then we have met all the needs. So our task is to complete what we have started from the first steps right now. evacuation. Together with UNHCR, we have the understanding, we have the high-level design, and the intention is to totally transform the database of IDPs established back in 2014. We understand that the needs and challenges were entirely different, and now we are changing the architecture and approach entirely. We want to adapt it as fast as possible, make sure it is fully in line with the needs, to make sure that the system can work directly with the person, collect feedback, learn about the new emerging needs and whether the previous needs have been met. Maybe there are any additional issues arisen because the life of the person would change as they are displaced, new children are born, people are learning new professions. Some have stayed a long time in the occupied territories, and now they want to take the parents back from there. So, yeah, they will have these requests and needs. Our task is to collect this feedback as fast as possible and respond to the extent possible. The tools are quite well known. We know how to respond. We have the support of the partners. We have the wonderful team that understands the political component of this and how this needs to be transitioned into regulations. We are moving forward fast to put this into practice and for us to see the first steps in the screens of our devices, and we need to get feedback from people who need aid. Thank you so much, Anatoly. I have noticed some important messages that you are sharing. Thank you for this transition to the actual needs from the status of the person. And indeed, these needs need to be tracked throughout the process, not only the moment when the person is first displaced. Also, thank you for transforming this obsolete IDP system. I believe that the presentation of the new concept of social support is one of those first tools and sustainable solutions that we are speaking here. Well, thank you so much for this. And now, having discussed the national level, it's important to pay attention to the regional level as well, because we understand that it is there that practices are being established, and a lot is, of course, dependent on how the national policies are implemented there. Hence, let's listen to Mr. Volodymyr Vasilenko, representative of Ternopil Oblast administration. My very first question is, I believe, quite painful, so we will be especially interested to hear about your experience and practices in Ternopil. We understand that humanitarian donors are prioritizing the east and the south of Ukraine, the active conflict areas. We also understand that the IDPs in western regions like yours have some basic needs and also some long-standing needs such as integration, access to education, jobs, etc. So how is this prioritization of humanitarian actors impacting the capacities of regions like yours, and what are the critical steps that are missing to overcome the gaps? This was question one, and my question two is about the successful transition practices, transition to sustainable solutions in Ternopil. Hello, Ksenia. Hello, everyone. I will start from expressing our gratitude to Nina and her office in Lviv, also Alexander and his office in Lviv, and the tragedy that recently took place in Ternopil. This is the first time something like this happened in Ternopil. Throughout this conflict, there were 34 people who died. There were up to 100 people who were injured. There were over 700 people who sustained damage of different kind. And thanks to your support, everyone who needed this help is now actually getting it. Now, coming back to the topic of internally displaced people, the policies indeed are developed and coordinated nationally, and we are there to implement it. I believe that implementation requires quite a lot of effort because there are 63,000 internally displaced people in Ternopil region. It is not merely one number. It actually means 63,000 different stories, different people with different needs. Some are elderly, some people are with disabilities, some have children, some don't, and it depends. There are lots of different needs, and based on those needs, we need to provide services. As for the services to be provided, it actually doesn't make much difference compared to a person who is not an internally displaced person. They would need a service anyway. It's just a set of needs in this person that would be slightly different. We are grateful to the government for establishing the mechanisms for the different types of people. So, for instance, Resolution 1169 is for low mobility groups and the elderly. There is the nursing and also long-term stay of those persons. Again, it's difficult to create things from scratch, but over time we are establishing the things, and the intention is to have sustainable solutions. So for now, things have been established for 1 year, and then there is some continuation envisioned, and hopefully the government will have something planned. As for the employment, 1403, the so-called OBRI, was approved. The initiative started 2-3 years ago. It started from the proactive approach in some communities concerning employment. I'm grateful to the government for making a decree based on this, and by the end of the year it's going to come into power, and this would reduce chaos and replace it with coordinated work. We do not see fewer people arriving. If we consider the period from August till this day, well, 2,500 people arrived in our region. They need housing, they need education, they need financial support, social services, a broad scope of services. I'm grateful to Tatiana for raising the important issue of the temporary stay collective centers. Many of you work in the field, and you know how it works. Right to Protection, I believe, has some experience in the field of social adaptation. There were 2 sanatoriums in which they were working. I believe this service is great because as a person is transitioning through the different stages of evacuation, they find themselves in an entirely new region. They don't know any people to speak to, and when there is this proactive position of the social services, non-governmental organizations, it's much easier for a person to understand what the next steps are. And unfortunately, though these centers are intended for temporary stay, many people live there since 2022, and as we know from experience, the easiest kind of people to work with are those who have arrived there recently. And when the community, when the social workers, when the humanitarian organizations are participating, when they consider the needs of the specific family, if let's say they have children, they need housing, they need employment, they need education, etc. And when this mechanism works, we are reducing the workload on the social workers, on the budget. Yeah, this is crucial because the money is limited these days. During the war, people who can work have to work. So 23,000 out of those 34,000 people are working age people. So if we provide jobs to them and if we work proactively, these people can work. And in the same way, those of the retirement age and people with low mobility, they should not be left to their own devices. There are services provided at home. There are humanitarian services. To me, as a representative of the administration, I see all the service providers as more or less equal. And some good examples that I could name are the following. Chortkiv unites the social housing complex, which is kind of a combination of different types of partnerships. They established smart apartments based on some residential community, and Crimea SOS and the community and many others were joining in the effort. And also they have launched a center in which the IDPs are employed, and this is a closed circle, and it gives people right to dignified life. So this is the solution for the working age people who are not limited in their mobility. And for the low mobility people, there is another example of a community which launched the ongoing care project, which ensured better quality services. Until then, the community was spending its own budget to provide care for those people. It's not even a city, it's a village community, so we understand it was quite a big load for the budget. And now everyone is satisfied, and when we are working to develop services in the region, we will be relying on 1169, focusing on the low mobility populations. We found about 100 locations that potentially could be used for the stay of IDPs. Each of them requires some efforts, some minor repairs, some quite considerable repairs, and all this requires both money and people. And of course, on top of that, we need to have people who would be able to implement all this. These people need to be well trained. We should not assign 100 different tasks to the same person, especially if we have not trained them before. So we need to train the social workers, and the system will work. Thank you. Thank you so much, Volodymyr, for this intervention. Actually, it seems in this panel we are developing the tools for transformation from humanitarian response to sustainable solutions. Thank you for underscoring the importance of comprehensive services, social services, housing, and employment. This triad can become the foundation for the transition. Also, there is a shared responsibility that I have noticed. The private-public partnership, and actually in the new edition of the law we have these opportunities for sharing social responsibility. Actually, you are also underscoring the importance of pilots, and here are some colleagues who hate the names of those decrees. So I will explain what they are all about. This is the money follows the person resolution on care. Also, there is the supported living regulation, and there is a law that you have mentioned, the law on the real estate that can be used for the stay of internally displaced people. So this is the legal framework in which we can take care of the IDPs. Also, thank you, Volodymyr, for underscoring the importance of strengthening the capacity of communities and providing training. That's an essential tool of the transition.
It's a representative or the actor who joins humanitarian response and developing initiative, and I will come to English.
Okay, let me turn to you as a director of the Empower project with GIZ. From your perspective, what does it actually mean in practice to integrate protection into development and recovery efforts? And if we start from the perspective of the affected person rather than from mandates or sectors or statuses. And within this broader protection chain, from humanitarian response to durable development-led solutions, how do you see the specific role of such actors like GIZ in the bridging humanitarian and development approaches and working across the Nexus initiative?
Yeah, first of all, also from my side, thank you very much that I have the opportunity to represent after central government has delivered, some thoughts, and regional government to also, give in some experiences more or less from the ground, but from a program's perspective. And also thank you very much for inviting me, because it is a good opportunity to also, underline the importance that especially the local level, and I'm very much in favor of the international localization approach, and especially in Ukraine, that, you give them a voice. Yeah? And I'm, let's say, honored that I'm the head of a program where I more or less moderate a network of around 60 NGOs providing services to most vulnerable people at the contact line. But we all know about the current developments in the country. We are also extending our approach towards the western part of the country, to the central part of the country, because humanitarian support, development support is needed everywhere. So thank you very much for the invitation. And now coming also to your question. And, you know, since I am working on the ground with a perfect team, I would like to approach this from a field reality. And especially from the perspective of the affected people. So listening to those people, you know, the logic becomes very much clear. They do not think, as you asked me, in clusters. They do not think in, let's say, the frame of mandates or funding cycles. They do think in terms of safety, of housing and children's schools, etc. So this is, you know, about the daily life, yeah? And integrating protection into development or recovery for me means three very practical things and takeaways I would like to share with you. The first one is that we need to start with the needs and the risks of people they are facing, and not with the structures and the systems, yeah, we are always talking about. What does it mean, or what do I mean by this? Yeah, this, from my perspective, requires a continuous assessment of what is needed on the ground. So I'm very happy to hear about the results of the survey this morning. Yeah, and I think it's crucial. It is very much needed to have constant, let's say, research and assessment on the specific needs. And these assessments, they need to be in somehow fed by household feedback, community inputs, etc. And this is exactly what we do in the Empower program. We start with initial assessments before we start any kind of activities. And jointly with our local partners, we do also make midterm assessments, so that at least our interventions stay relevant. And relevance, this is most important. It's not relevant to donors, it's relevant to the people. This is actually what we need. And so the planning from the person's perspective, from my understanding, is the foundation of integrating protection into recovery or development efforts. The second point is that protection should be shaped, or must be shaped, development and recovery planning from the very beginning of any kind of intervention, and not only to be added at a later point. Yeah? What is it that I mean by that? Yeah? If local authorities start rebuilding houses, start reopening schools, start reopening hospitals or social services, yeah, we do immediately need to consider safety. We need to consider accessibility, inclusion and non-discrimination, so that we do not risk that we are reinforcing existing vulnerabilities. Meaning, protection needs to integrate, or needs to be integrated into house repairs. It needs to be integrated into allocation processes. It needs to be integrated into education pathways. Yeah? And the Empower program, or in the Empower program, we are lucky to somehow build this bridge between emergency response and long-term development approaches, because we do combine an initiative. We are funded on the one hand side by German government, so with a long-term perspective, and we are also funded by ECHO with the emergency and humanitarian perspective. So within the Empower project, we do really live and implement the nexus. And this is important, and it's also kind of privilege. Yeah, so to bring in both perspectives at the same time, and which leads from the humanitarian response, immediate response, to the opportunity to sustainable services. The third and last point I would also like to share with you is that we need to build local systems at the primary protection actors. What is it that I mean by this? Protection becomes only sustainable if the municipalities, for instance, on the personal level, or social workers or the teachers, the local services, are involved and included and are able to identify the risks in the municipality, in the hromades immediately, and know how to react and respond to those risks immediately. That's why within the Empower program, we do very much invest into capacity building of our partner NGOs. We do focus very much on local-led program design. That means that it's not us as the implementers or the donors who prescribe activities or the overall objective. No, it's the communities and the frontline NGOs, because they know better. They know better the needs, and this is, a very clear principle that we follow within our program. And last not least, we do also support a stronger referral pathways between the NGOs on the one hand side, the local services, and especially the state institutions. And this is, how protection, from my perspective, becomes embedded in recovery processes, and so that we will also remain longer as humanitarian actions, but we will also, for long-term perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Eike, for your intervention and highlighting the importance of person's perspective when we are talking about any programming of humanitarian response activities as well as development activities. And I just noted after you that protection must be shaped at the start of any intervention. I believe that it's the only way around when we are talking about transition from humanitarian aid to durable solutions. І на цьому етапі я повертаюся до української мови.
And at this stage I come back to Ukrainian language, and then the next speaker will be in this discussion will be Mr. Alexander Halkin. As Mr. Eike has emphasized the importance of localization and the role of national actors, of NGOs, local organization. Please tell us, is it the right for protection of organization which joins humanitarian mandate has possibility to be equal changes of all levels, national, international, and local? How do you see such national role as a full cycle as a law for protection, such a humanitarian support from the first line of response till the sustainable decision is a system of social services, housing policy, social response, and economic employment? And with the next question, we talk a lot about localization, and from your perspective, what's in the real localization of humanitarian response, and what's exit strategies must be strategies of for donors and international organization? Thank you. as usual, is the most difficult question to me. Concerning the first, right, we have been built this organization in order to follow the needs, and as it was already mentioned, it's very frequent. Ukraine is a very specific story comparing to many other contexts, humanitarian contexts, and Kharkiv, for example. Kharkiv city is a city where life is very vivid, despite its front line is very close. And in Kharkiv, for example, there are people, IDPs, who has recently came to Kharkiv city, and they need, first of all, housing, have some psychosocial support, legal support, and work, and then where to live. And it can be during months' time. It's very difficult to divide with humanitarian, with developing people on land, on the ground. It's not important for them. They don't care much, and we have such kind of idea that we are able to cover. We name it the principle of single window, but it's clear that we are ready. We are ready as such organization which can do it, and we are doing it from a very initial scenes, sharing of something, of some difficult scenes, some rebuilding chaotic centers, for example, of work with documents for returning of houses. And the problem is that we cannot generate such income for ourselves, and that is why we are depending on our partners, on donors. It's traditionally donors who from states who providing the help and support for Ukraine. And we have humanitarian donors, development donors, and frequently when people live at the same roof, under the same roof, they generally don't communicate, don't cooperate between each other. And we have some exclusion, some Swiss, they, for example, are trying to join everything together and make it in such a way that they see these needs, they can come from the development strategy. It was we have such things that besides we have to build the society, Ukrainian society. It's more if you're a sustainable organization, you have been working for a long time, and you have such a feeling that you're growing up and you need to provide, to share your knowledge. And we are dealing with this very actively. We are understanding that it's very important, and it's very important for small organization, not only for pre-front line and also in the center of Ukraine and close to Lviv. It's the first thing, it's the first question. And the second question, exit strategies for donors and international organizations. I don't even know how to come to this, because it's clear that some process of localization, in principle, for me, I dislike it. It's like a little bit about colonization, and I would rather use it like local leadership or even Ukrainian leadership. It's not only about the civil sector, it's about state, and the state demonstrates its active leadership. And I like it, when we cooperate with the state, and for Ukrainian leadership must be more expressed. That is why, as far as I know, each organization, international organization, donors, they see This everything from the headquarters is a strategy of way out, but the global, they're not about some kind of separate state. But for me, I don't see like such international organization kept to take out of Ukraine, and it will be not correct. And we have the radical vision that the Ukrainian organization are so ready that we have it doesn't work like we will give you money and you will do it. Such organization work on different things, and very they have very sustainable experience and such subjectivity for Ukraine, for Ukrainian actors, and the state and civil sector must cooperate closer, both for the point of the sectors, because we have a social policy where they provide money, for example, of local ADPs, and having such a list of organizations which are providers of social services, and this continue because Ukrainian organizations are pretty prepared. We have a communal organization, and here you should have some kind of ratio which could show that Ukrainian organization is already independent from international donors. They can be dependent, but they have possibility. I know that Caritas is very active, but this list can be more wider. It's a localization example for such panel. And the strategy is not kind of panacea, but we have plenty of expertise, plenty of experience, and international NGOs. They have such, they have globally contacted, and this fundraising that it can be, they can count them for local organization. It can be very good benefit for Ukrainian leadership. A little bit of top, if you don't mind. It's very important. We talk a lot about way of IDP, and it's very important to have such transit center. This transmission to new place can have more dignified and safe. We don't know these figures, but 80% of evacuation is self-evacuation, and we don't know what's happening to these people. That UN see it, and you see, we have 100% of nexus of development.
And one important aspect here is that since there is no money or less and less money, these requests for nexus and development are sometimes seen as things that far away from humanitarian needs, although they are related, and it's important for the donors and the government to work together and understand that this is something that needs to be built, this chain, bringing together all the different actors. Thank you, Alexandra. On my part, I will only add that since the onset of the full-scale invasion, Right to Protection has provided support to over 3 million people, which is about 10% of Ukraine's population. This number is quite important. And thank you for underscoring the importance of civil society and very importantly, the local organizations need something more than just financing. They need expertise, they need knowledge, they need their capacity to be developed. And also, as you're rightly mentioning, everyone who has been impacted by the conflict needs to be seen. For the government, the humanitarian actors, and the local self-governments. And for us to complete this circle and come back to the humanitarian architecture, I will now transition back to English and speak to Katarzyna.
Protection cluster work over the past years. What are the main key preconditions need to be in place for a responsible transition from humanitarian protection to state systems, both at national level and at the Hromada level? And from your monitoring and partners' feedback, what are the main difficulties and risks in ensuring continuity of protection when humanitarian actors scale down and state systems are expected to take over? Over to you.
Thank you, Ksenia. And I think it's equally difficult question to the one Sasha got, but I will also, as an opening remark, say that, in our partnership with Right to Protection in coordinating protection cluster, we are very used to getting difficult questions almost every day. So I'll stand up to the challenge, which I think is a lot. It's always interesting to be the last panelist, because actually a lot of the prior panelists have already made so many valid points. So I will start maybe reflecting a bit on transition, and Anne-Sophie was already talking about it at a more intersectoral level. I'll cover it more from protection angle, which I think we all understand as a process. It's not a single moment in time. You don't do transition in one day, and it's a process in which we as humanitarians transfer the accountabilities for the humanitarian response, but also for the coordination structures over time. I think, in protection sector, we like to say that protection is not de facto so vertical. And what we mean by that, it's not that protection is only relevant strictly in the humanitarian realm in which we operate. And I think Eike was actually really explaining it very well, underlining how protection is relevant in humanitarian sphere, in development sphere. You mentioned so many great examples, and then throughout the transition process itself, even guiding it at the centrality of protection level. So so protection is relevant throughout. What changes along this process is the nature of protection activities and the nature of protection assistance. Now, what are the factors? And I think looking back into my now over 2 years experience since I arrived, I think one of the key elements for transition is to really start thinking about it at the very early stages of the humanitarian response. So many times, we're thinking, oh, it's somewhere towards the end when the humanitarian funding is shrinking. Nothing. I mean, this is not how it should be. I mean, the interagency transition guidance tells us all that we should be starting the transition as soon as the humanitarian response starts, and that's how I think we've been really acting along in Ukraine. There were moments where we are getting additional motivation thanks to our OCHA colleagues to ring the bell, fit for purpose exercise, and then we of course mobilize, but it should not be only for fit for purpose exercise. We should be doing it really every day, engaging our wide group of partners. In protection cluster, we work with 150 organizations. including community-based organizations, national organizations, and we all need to be able to plan for what we understand transition is at a national level, to have the national level planning, but also at Hromada level. This year we actually worked with REACH organization to look at the case studies in 6 Hromadas, where we looked at what happened when, well, that was humanitarian the transition that happened because the funding started to be reduced in Western Center. Some of the Hromadas is Western Center. And this study also shows how important it is to plan for transition at the local level in collaboration with the local authorities. 2 very important factors as we transition are the constant, and colleagues have been talking about it, including Ms. Kirilenko, Mr. Komerne, constant assessment of the needs. So you really need to understand what the needs are as we transition and adapt constantly, and at the same time work really closely with our government counterparts. For us in Protection Ministry of Social Policy is critical actor to understand the capacities and how we can best provide for protection class and protection actors is humanitarian contributions. And I think what is maybe last reflection on transition from my experience really is that, you know, in the now since 2022 we cannot just allow ourselves, and sometimes humanitarians, you know, have these tendencies, you come, you copy paste from other responses, quick tools. This is really what we should not be doing anymore under transition, particularly in Ukraine, where we do have systems in place, where we have government counterparts who have vision of what needs to be done to better protect the internally displaced people. And I think it's really critical, including for humanitarian actors, to really tune into this vision, to understand the legislative frameworks. You were referring to the resolution 1169, you were referring to the resolution 1307 on evacuations very recently, or the one on Predulok as well, 1169. So we need to understand what these are and how we can, from humanitarian angle, make the most valid contributions to this plan while recognizing the needs of the people on the ground. And bring this vulnerability community-based lens. Many of our actors work, you know, along the spectrum of humanitarian development, so also benefit and make it a strength that organizations that we work with can extend into both of these spheres. I will mention one big risk. That's the last point I want to make, because you asked me, Ksenia, about the risks. And you know, as we transition, and as well, we are also working in the environment of constantly shrinking financial resources. I think the big risk is that we miss who the most vulnerable people are, for whom we should be here first and foremost as humanitarians. Sometimes we're drawn into, you know, visibility, sometimes we're drawn into easy gains, but working with the most vulnerable is a difficult endeavor, and we need to stay very data-driven in how we implement it. And that's why I believe initiatives like the UNHCR and its partners protection survey are critical for all of us to understand who are the most vulnerable people. Nina was talking about, and I think many of you were talking about people with low mobility, single-headed households. Understand who they are, what risks they're facing, and where they are. We need to have robust protection monitoring in place, including understanding people's situations really through a holistic assessment of their individual circumstances and treating them as people first and foremost, not like numbers. And that is the key to be able, as our government counterparts, continue improving and reforming the systems to protect internally displaced people, for us to be able to identify these individual barriers that people are facing and have this meeting point where we bring them into the systems that are being constantly improved. I will stop here, Ksenia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kasia, for the important intervention you've made in terms of treating vulnerable people, the most vulnerable people, not as the sheer numbers, but as like real needs and difficult circumstances they are in. And thank you very much for focusing on the centrality of protection perspective and for highlighting the main risks, as well as the principle that planning transition should start at all levels at the same moment. And thank you for your intervention so much. And зараз я перейду на українську мову, і ми...
And now I will transition back to Ukrainian. I will ask one very short question. I do understand my boss just looking at him, but still. In this context of uncertainty, quite often we understand that the persons in need do not have the clarity on whether the services will be available, on whether the aid will keep being provided. And in this uncertainty, it's very difficult to plan one's life, difficult to plan integration. In your opinion, how could we make this transition more predictable and more accountable to the persons in need?
Thank you, and coming back to me, so thank you. Building on this, it's not an easy question. I think we've been talking about putting people at the center of the response and making sure that we hear what they have to say before we tell them what we can do for them, and avoid coming with some ready-made solution. I think that's for me an important point that needs to be made for that. I also think that a lot of people know what they need, and so I think also it's important to build that. And I think we've been talking very much around the needs this morning, so that's what I could answer.
Пані Тетяно?
Well, to be brief, that's actually what we have mentioned. Establishing a single system would let all the participants to see what is being provided by the different actors, the government, the non-governmental sector, and the person would be getting the support based on their actual needs. Also, as we are developing the policy for social services, social support, as we are developing the system of the providers, it's actually the providers and the government will be dependent on the person, because the money will be following the person and the person will be knowledgeable on what support programs are available. On my part, a few words as well. We are transitioning from the status to the needs. And to answer these questions, we need to actualize the problems that people have. That's what our system needs to do with support of our partners, with support of the colleagues who are in this communication on a daily basis. We need to see first what's needed and then find ways to address those needs. I will split my answer into two parts. The first part is the proposal, and the proposal is that as Poltava was testing the system in the test mode before, we are also ready to test the system of the ministry first. And as for the vision, the communities and people have this resilience system as something they receive quite well, and I was getting lots of positive feedback, and I was also asking Anatoly a lot about the opportunities to continue this practice. So these things need to be sustainable rather than having this as experiment only, and then people would be sure that this would be working on the ongoing basis. So are we having an air raid alert? No, we don't. Okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it was already mentioned, clear and transparent communication. So what is being expected, what are the resources available, on what time, and we call it expectation management. Yeah, so that, people know what can be offered. And the second point is, I've mentioned before, also from a program and projects perspective, it is important that we have and follow up an ongoing monitoring for assessing the situation so that assistance and support can always be adjusted.
Ms. Kasia?
As a protection expert, that of course, as we communicate with people, this has to be done through multiple accessible channels and utilizing the great mechanisms that we have, like IDP councils. I also think that for the better predictability, the great opportunity that the Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan 2026 is giving us through the strategic priority 4 on centrality of protection to support the vulnerable IDPs and the severely vulnerable groups is a really great entry point to provide more predictability for the responses of this most vulnerable people, including in Western Center, where we know it has been quite shaky, and now we have this great opening.
Thanks. I have a new favorite word, protectability. Nice one, thanks. Alexandra?
Я думаю, що то, що я
I believe, as I have mentioned before, we need to make this system more flexible thanks to participation of civil society as service providers, and then they will be working side by side with the beneficiaries, and this is going to be simpler in terms of communication. But as far as I can see, the needs keep increasing, as well as the numbers of people in need, and this is my subjective opinion. This is an irreversible process, and maybe, we need to narrow the scope, but be honest with people, and for the government to communicate it clearly. We can communicate these kind of services to these types of people, and this will be provided on the ongoing basis within the financing we have. So in some sense it's a bad news, because we all have this habit of like maybe 40% of people being dependent on social services, but realistically speaking, we have to reduce these numbers, and we have to rely on some vulnerability criteria, as we usually put it in our community. The criteria need to be stricter, and that's the only way to go. But in this sense, it will be simpler to communicate on the sustainable basis. Thank you so much, dear colleagues. Our panel is now over, and I believe I will be praised by the moderator, because our timing is perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. And one only tiny remark from me, that we have heard all the different perspectives here, the national perspective, the perspective of the international organizations, the perspective of the development and humanitarian actors, the perspective of the regional level. And the only one conclusion that I'd like to make here is that this transition is not transition from one system to another. Rather, it's building an ecosystem system in which each actor is contributing to the other actors. Thank you so much, wonderful speakers, for your expertise, for your leadership, for not being indifferent. Thank you for being professionals, and thank you for your commitment. Dear colleagues, please stay here for a photo. There will be the photographer guiding you. Maybe it's better to stand up for the photo. And actually, dear colleagues, we now have our time for the coffee break and also for the virtual visits to Sumy Transit Center and also CN Sergei Karavani exhibition. One other tiny aspect while the photos are being taken. I believe that on registration, all of you have selected your preferred session. We have 4 sections now, and the first one is on legal aid. That's going to be moderated by Christina Zakharova. And if you permit, will guide you to the hall that is called Spirit. So yeah, you will be focusing on the regulations and supremacy of law. Here we have the room named DIM or home. You will be discussing children. In this room we will have session 3 by Helena Osova, and it will be focusing on social services, on housing and employment. And also there will be one more section that is going to be in the playground zone. That's also where you can enjoy the exhibition and the virtual visit. It's going to be focused on evacuation and the related issues. As Alexander has rightly mentioned, self-evacuation is one of the questions in focus. And one more person is Marina Us, who is going to moderate the discussion on children here in the neighboring room. So please start going there at 12:40.